I already clicked it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. And today my guests are up early for where they live. So thank you so much for getting up really early today, bright and early. Although you're going to change your whole life because of this morning. And you're going to say, wow, waking up at 7:30 and being dressed and made up is perfect.
We're happy to be here whatever time you invite us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay. So let me introduce you. Today, I am here with Cindy Muchnick and Jen Curtis. They are the authors of The Parent Compass, and I'm going to give a plug for their book. Here's their book. Everyone should get it and add it to the pile of really great books for parents of teenagers. And so we're going to talk a little bit about first of all, The Parent Compass and what that name stands for, and also some of the great tips in the book and how they can apply to you and to us. And throughout, for whoever's on the call right now, please ask your questions in the comments and we will get to them. So the first thing is you came up with a formula, which is the title of your book, The Parent Compass. And so I wanted to talk about how the idea of the Parent Compass can help all of us stay focused on raising kids who launch successfully. Because at the end of the day, that's our task, to get them independent and managing on their own, despite whatever emotions we have along the way of letting that happen. So the Parent Compass, what are I think you mostly have 7 or 8 tips for what that stands for?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely want, we all want to raise self-reliant kids that have voices of their own, opinions of their own, and lives of their own. And that, as we know, and as you've devoted your career to, Sue, that's not always the easiest thing to do when our heart is involved as a parent. So yes, Jen and I wouldn't call it necessarily so much as a formula, but maybe just teaching signposts or, parent guidance, suggestions, and, not everything necessarily works for each family. It's not really one size fits all, but obviously some key themes that we hear sort of over and over again, but Jen and I explore a little bit differently because the hats that we wear were professional educational consultants. So we had worked with teens. Jen still continues to work with teens from middle through high school, kind of guiding them through the academic journey, but also just being sounding boards for them and their families in some cases. And so what we started seeing in the parents through the years, and also as a result of the news last March 2019, when the Varsity Blues scandal erupted, we just saw parents behaving badly. And the behavior, was on the news, but it also was in some of our offices. And it manifested itself in the behavior of the kids, meaning we saw some students along the way that just couldn't speak for themselves, were unhappy, listless, not just being directed by their parents, and they just didn't seem like they were capable 17-year-old, 16-year-old, 14-year-old individuals that could speak for themselves. So
Let me jump in as one of those parents to say that we are all trying our very best.
We are.
And the intent is the same for all of us to do right by our kids, but we're going to get some solid advice if you're looking to maybe just pivot a little bit to see some changes in your house and with your relationship with your kids. So can you give us some of those? I know that I think the first one you talk about is letting your kid fail. And that to me has always been such a complicated one because, Wendy Mokel wrote these 2 books, Blessings of a B- and Blessings of a Skin Knee. And I always thought those are such better guides than let them fail. Because some people don't really understand, you don't have to watch a kid become addicted, right? That's not the goal. But what is the equivalent in your mind of a parent raising a teenager? What does the skin need today?
I think I think we all can say that we know deep down that it's in that discomfort, it's in those, that ugly, it's in that skin knee that we know that our kids grow the most. But I think that our own fears get in the way. And just as it's uncomfortable for them to sit in the discomfort of making a mistake and having to start over, it can be just as uncomfortable for us to watch them make that mistake. It can be really hard just as humans to really kind of marinate in our failures and in our inadequacies in ways that we don't measure up. And so But I think it's important to understand that it's the best that we can do for ourselves and also for our kids. I think the skinned knee or the B- is going to be different in every family. Every kid has a different threshold, and it's up to the parents to really listen to the kids and understand where that is. And where, there are times when parents do need to step in. Like you said, you can't sit there and watch your kid become addicted. You need to step in before those things happen. So it is different, but I think that we as parents need to be reminding ourselves that it's okay if things don't go perfectly, because that's what catapults them. That's where their growth comes from.
And in your experience working with teenagers, what would you say, like if you picked one thing, what would be the thing that you even yourself and you want to encourage other parents to step back a little bit from?
One is contacting teachers. I think, we, for the Parent Compass, we did a lot of interviews with teachers, with deans, with administrators, parenting experts. And I think one of the pieces of feedback that we received, and also what we were seeing, were parents who were intervening on behalf of their kids, because it was, they felt that they could fight for a better grade for their kid, or, oh my goodness, a B-, they can't get into college, and so I need to go fix this for them. And the reality is, that's when we started to see kids who were coming into our office who didn't have self-advocacy skills. They were ripping those away from the kids. They couldn't, I think that self-advocacy is very much a learned skill, and it takes a lot of time to learn it. You've got to start from a young age to really practice it continuously. And so when parents are constantly jumping in and running to teachers and administrators, they're taking that practice away from their kids.
I remember the person who had that conversation with me, the expert in parenting, who said, well, don't you want a kid who can? Because that kid was using their advocacy with me and I wasn't enjoying it so much. And they said, don't you want them to be able to advocate in the world? And that changed my parenting dramatically. So I'm glad you threw that out there as a really important skill. Cindy, do you have a different one?
I would just say to support your kids' interests, their interests and not yours. And interests can be pretty broad, but just the way that they spend their free time doing whatever their activities might be. Obviously, from a very young age, we expose them to things, and they take to some of them and they don't take to others. So I always joke that, my kids would probably not swim laps in a pool because I never really took them very often to swim team or things like that, or on a boat. We're not a nautical family. So my kids didn't get exposed to that. Although now they say, hey, I'd like to know how to do that better than the way you didn't teach me how to do that. But it's understanding what excites your kids. And so when you expose them to things and they take to one of them or a few of them, to really support that. Or if they come up with one of their own and bring you an interest that you have no experience in or no understanding of, but that you just say, okay, let me help you figure out how to do that or do more of that because that's something you enjoy. And it could be as simple as, after school, if they're really into animals, getting them to a shelter where they can pet the puppies, or if it's, wanting to walk the neighbor's dog. I mean, it's just whatever way you can help facilitate something that they enjoy.
Yeah, my pain point was when my youngest wanted to play football, but it was really important to him and I got overridden. So he did it. But it's hard. It's hard because it doesn't always align with the dreams you held for your own kids. So I think those are really two fantastic points to bring up. Okay, so in your book, you provide a list. First of all, there's many more pieces to the Parent Compass. So when you read it, you'll see that there's many more things. But we have limited time to cover all the questions. So the next thing I want to ask you is, you talk about the questions that will help facilitate a healthy conversation with your teenager. So I'm sure most of us can pinpoint the moment we ask the wrong question. But it's really tough to know what the right question is. So can each one of you give us like your favorite of the list that you think really works well?
Well, I really like to focus when I can on the positive. And a lot of families do rose and thorn at the end of the day, the highlight and the low light. So I like to just ask my kids, what did you do that made you happy today? And it could be a time that they laughed with a friend, or it could be something relating to a teacher. It could really be anything, but to try to keep things positive. I would say even more than ever when a lot of them are confined to their bedrooms doing school, or, not getting out as much. So just trying to find those glimmers of laughter. And I will say it feels really good to hear the answer, because then you can nod and smile and share in whatever the happy moment is. Sometimes they're very silly, and sometimes they're really significant. So I'm more of a cheerleader approach. So I like to try to get them to see if they can find some sunshine and happiness.
That one can't really fail, right? Like, that's a great one. Jen, you have a favorite?
Yeah, I really like how did you help someone today? I think in our super hyper competitive world where, we're, so many kids are clawing to be at the top, and you're inherently competing against your friends. I want my kids to really stop and think about citizenship and being a good friend and helping others. And I do think that kind of can get lost in all the competition. We cited the well-known Making Caring Common project study, where kids said that they felt that their parents were more proud of them when they earned good grades than when they were a caring person. And that's always really struck me. And so that's kind of why that one sticks out to me, and why I want to kind of remind my kids of that every day.
I love that question. My question to you is, do you get eye rolls when you ask it? Like, is there buy-in if you ask that every day? Do they know that that's the question coming?
Maybe. But maybe it's not something that you need to ask every single day. I also think you can kind of, we in the Parent Compass, we offer tons of questions. And I think if you're asking the same one every day, no matter what it is, right? It almost at a certain point becomes, how was your day? So I think if you can mix them up, but that is my favorite one.
Yeah. I love that. I think also mix it up, because you could alternate between your two suggestions.
Yeah, or throw some table topics out on your kitchen table, or, a box of questions, the book of questions. We have those kinds of things where you don't even have to think about it. You just pull one out, and you can start great conversations that way that are a little bit different, off the beaten path.
My kids are so happy right now that they're not living in my house, because they would hate that one. Okay, so in talking about the questions, how much does tone and timing matter in terms of your kid walks in the house? I mean, not so much today for everybody, but under normal circumstances, your kid walks in the house, it's been a long day. Do you have recommendations about timing and how should our voice sound to our kids?
I think it's critical. I mean, I think we all know that anxiety can be contagious. So our own anxiety is contagious to our kids, and we can pick up on our spouse's anxiety. We can pick up on our kids' anxiety. And I think when you know that your kid is already in a hyper aroused or stressful state, and you're asking them stressful questions, or you're nagging, it's not going to go well. It's never going to go well. So I think it's absolutely important to be picking up on those cues and wait until a time where they're ready to talk and to process. And you can ask them those questions. Hey, I've got something important to chat about. When would be a good time for you to do that? Cindy, do you have anything to add?
I was just going to say also just environment. If your kid is on the couch, kind of sprawled out, go join them, sprawl out with them. Or if they're up at the kitchen counter, join them there. Being above and below, you're kind of up here and they're down there and you're talking at them. I think there's just a better connection when you look at the body language and the signals of just kind of how they are. It's less formal and more conversational. I mean, when they were little, they would cuddle with us and you could pull out a book and pull out an activity. When they're bigger or bigger than you, I just think proximity and sometimes even touch, if they're comfortable with that. They aren't always. I remember learning that even in a parenting class when my kids were little, to let them know you're engaged with the eye contact and the touch. So
I think also a big part of the Parent Compass is helping parents understand their role in so many different parts of, I mean, for us, kind of the college going process, but in the teen years. And I think with the communication piece, you know, there's something to be said for us wanting to offload our own anxiety. And so, you know, when they get in the door, we really want to get our own anxiety just dealt with, right? So we want to say whatever we need to say right away. So I think it's kind of taking a step back from that and looking at it from their point of view.
You're waiting and waiting for them to get home so you can jump on them, and they're so excited about that moment.
Oh.
Okay, so another aspect to maybe just pivoting a little on how we engage with our kids is this idea of active listening. And you give many examples. If you, again, each one of you could just pick one to share with us.
The one I've learned the most from the book, you know, in writing the book and working with Jen, who has a, you know, background in psychology and therapy, it's helped me even a lot personally as a parent, because in the book, we don't profess that we're at all perfect. We're learning as well as we go along, and we learn as we have each child even, and as they grow, how to do a better job or how to improve or how to pull back. And so for me, the zipping my lips and nodding my head and the tell me more about that, using those affirmative words where just to show that we're listening and not trying to put words in their mouth, thoughts in their head, fix something, just to be, you know, that listener. So I like the tell me more. It's just easy, and it's the head nod and the
I think, as Cindy mentioned, my background is rooted in mental health. And so one of the ones that I like the most is paraphrasing, because I think in the therapeutic world, it shows the client that you are engaged and it helps them feel understood in a non-judgmental way. And I think it certainly does that with teenagers as well. And I also think that when we're paraphrasing, we're almost forcing ourselves to be present in the conversation. I think a lot of times when we're conversing with anybody, but even our kids, you know, we have a tendency to have our minds wander off onto the 18 things that we have on our to-do list. But when you're paraphrasing back to them, okay, so I understand that. So this is what you're saying. It forces you to be there and listen and pick up on the details and rephrase it back to them in your words.
And by the way, those two tips, they work in all relationships. Mm-hmm. Like, tell me more is such a good default. You know, when you're like not sure how to follow up with something and you say something like tell me more or actually tell me more, I mean, everyone who doesn't like that on the other side of it, right? It's just great. And also like that reflective listening is really helpful. So really excellent ones to pick. Thank you. Okay. You talk about in your book how important it is for us as parents to know ourselves, which is a lifelong journey. It's not like, you know, okay, I'm going to work on that between this week and next week. But in your journey of writing this book, what did you learn about yourselves? You know, can you give an example of something that your research brought light to in yourself, an aha moment for yourself?
I realized maybe way too much about myself. I'm just failing in every aspect. No, actually, that has to do with what I would say. I've always known that I have had an aversion to failure and making mistakes and not being liked by other people. But I think in writing the book, it made me really take a hard look and reflect on how that can impact my parenting and how that can impact my kids just through my example and my role modeling. And it's something that I desperately do not want to instill in my kids. So it's something that's on my mind every day, something that I really have to work at and really, you know, trying to be brave and honestly have conversations with my kids about it. I think that's an important part of it as well. When we can be humble and come to our kids and say, look, you know, these are things that I deal with every day. And, you know, I think it can humanize us.
I think I learned that I have a bit of a technology addiction. The chapter that we wrote on technology was definitely the hardest chapter personally for me to be a part of. Jen and I actually struggled together to gather, information from people who had written books on the topic and who really, knew how to frame technology. But we start that chapter in writing about a story where my then 13-year-old daughter had to physically come up to me, and she had to kind of parent me. She had to pull me off of my laptop, take my arm, say, Mom, I need you to look at me. I need to tell you something. I need you to listen to me. And that's pretty daunting when your child sort of has to peel you off of a device that, is making them feel less important than who they are as a human standing next to you. So I would say that was my naughty girl moment where I just went, okay, I need to kind of have a better balance here. And so I've started to try to practice myself many of the things we talk about in the technology chapter, and also realize that I think I'm pretty lucky in that my kids didn't inherit I guess this kind of addiction from me. So anyway, it's been a good learning process for me, and I think I've made some good personal changes. I hope they would agree. And we've, made some changes as a family as well, just by following some of the guidelines of the Family Dinner Project, which, really helps engage families in different ways, and by, having device-free time, and by not getting always sucked down the rabbit hole of what, kind of the internet and our phones can do to us. We've had some really good time on technology, actually playing some family games through our technology. So I would not say it's all bad. I think it's can be used in ways that's really wonderful. So,
well, the thing what I love most about both your stories is that they were connected to how you parent. They were directly connected. Like, I don't want to pass that on to my kids, and my kids are parenting me around it. So it is a two-way conversation. And the idea, I would just say that, having raised 5 teenagers, it's the most humbling experience of your life. So being able to say to them, I'm struggling with this also, is there's nothing better than that moment where your kid has some compassion for you because you've been honest. So those were both great. Last question. You co-wrote this book so that parents could access new parenting tools. You've given us many of them. What would be your big takeaway that you wish for?
I think we hope that parents have the confidence and the bravery to check themselves. As Cindy mentioned, this book, the catalyst for this book, while it's not about Operation Varsity Blues, the college admission scandal, that was the catalyst, in that we were seeing poor parenting behavior. And then we were also seeing parents who really wanted to, and I would argue that all parents really want to be doing the best that they can for their kids, but they just didn't have the tools and the strategies to do that. Or they saw everybody around them frantically tutoring, and they thought, okay, well, that's what I should be doing too, I guess. And so I would like parents to really have the confidence to check themselves. And I don't think, we're not saying that this is necessarily like a one size fits all approach, right? We understand that some of our tips will work for some families and other ones will work for other families. But I would like parents to feel permission to break the mold, do what's best for their teen and their family, and be in tune with that, even if it means making people mad. Or disappointing people, or not, having the best Instagram announcement, and really seeing their teen for who they are and not who they would like to make them be.
That it is so contagious, that whole culture. It's like, it is hard to extricate yourself from it. Okay, Cindy?
I think I would, it's a little bit of a 2-part, so I'll make it quick, but I think I would want parents, one of their main takeaways to be that, getting from point A to point B is not a straight line. There's just not, we all know that we veer up and down and in lots of different directions to get to wherever it is we are in life, or whatever goal that we've set for ourselves. And so we focus our entire closing chapter in the book on alternative routes to college, alternative views you can have for your kids, whether it is, trade school, whether it's, the military, whether it's taking a gap year, whether it's starting at a community college or going straight to work and then going back to school. There's not just, again, like Jen said, a one size fits all, a one way to do it. So I would say for parents to be more flexible and open with just not always having this direct route. And I think one of the benefits almost of what we've experienced with the pandemic is that people are gaining that flexibility or that acceptance of not having the direct journey that it can veer and ebb and flow. And then the other piece I think would be that the Parent Compass really does merit conversation. And we've been so pleased with book clubs that have sprung up. And we encourage families to be brave and parents to get together and read this book and share it together. We have a whole book club guide that allows for these kinds of conversations that we're having today between parents in your own community. So you can build a little village around some of these concepts and try to practice them and try to carry them forward, and then create your own kind of new group of parent friends that are sort of along the same page as you. So those would be my suggested takeaways.
That's very lovely. Anywhere you can find community during this period of life, it's a win-win for everybody. So Cindy Muchnick and Jen Curtis, thank you so much for being here with us today. It was really wonderful.
Thank you for having us, Sue. We love everything that your team does as well. And, we've been happy to be a part of your community too. So thank you for the things you've taught us.
Thank you. And we were guests on their podcast. So that was really fun.
Which will be coming up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.